Let's go over the solutions to linear function exercises. So let's find the x and y intercepts of 7x minus 4y equals negative 12. So our x-intercept, we'll start with that. That is where the line or the graph crosses the x-axis. When you're crossing the x-axis, your y value is 0, so that's exactly how you find it. You plug in y equals 0. That 4 times 0 term goes away, and we're left with 7x equals negative 12. Divide both sides by 7, and we get x equals negative 12 over 7. That means where this line crosses the x-axis is where x is equal to negative 12 over 7. But the x-intercept is a point, and points are written as ordered pairs, so we would write that as the ordered pair negative 12 over 7, comma 0. For the y-intercept, this is where the graph of the line or the curve or the equation crosses the y-axis. And when you're on the y-axis, that means that your x value is 0. So that's how we'll find it, by plugging in x equals 0. The 7 times 0 term goes away. Divide both sides by negative 4, and we get y equals 3. So the place where the graph will cross the y-axis is when y is 3, but the y-intercept is an ordered pair, so we have to write it as an ordered pair, 0, 3. Now let's find slope between points. Here we have 3 halves, 1, and 1, negative 4 thirds. So if we want to find the slope, remember to find the slope, you take the y from your second point minus the y from your first point over the x from your second point minus the x from your first point. So when we do that, negative 4 thirds minus 1 over 1 minus 3 halves, in order to subtract this and this, first of all, these 1's need to be fractions, but they need to be fractions with a common denominator. So I get negative 4 thirds minus 3 thirds, right? 3 over 3 is 1. And 2 over 2, which is 1, minus 3 halves. Once the denominators are the same, you can subtract their numerators over that denominator. So negative 4 minus 3, 2 minus 3, gives us negative 7 thirds over negative 1 half. Now to divide fractions, you take your top fraction and you multiply it to the reciprocal of the bottom fraction. And then to multiply fractions, just multiply the numerators. Negative 7 times 2 is negative 14. Multiply your denominators. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. And remember that a negative over a negative is a positive. Now there are two ways of interpreting slopes, right? Rise over run. How much you go up and down over how much you go left and right. Well, if we look at the slope this way, negative 14 over negative 3, that negative 14 means you're going to go down 14, and this negative 3 means you're going to go left 3. But if we interpret it as the positive 14 over positive 3, then that positive 14 means you'll go up 14, and the positive 3 means you'll go right 3. So that's the two ways we can interpret that slope. Let's look at negative 2, 7 and 1, 7. So again, we'll take the y from our second point minus the y from our first point over the x from our second point minus the x from our first point. That gives us 7 minus 7 over 1 minus negative 2. Well, that ends up giving us 0 over 3, which we know is 0. So what type of line has a 0 slope? No rise, but run, right? So think of this, 0 over 3. That means don't go up or down, go right 3. Don't go up or down, go right 3. Don't go up or down, right 3. So if you're not going up or down and you're just going right 3, right 3, right 3, right 3, then what you're forming is a nice horizontal line. And when we write a horizontal line, it's just y equals a number. It's saying no matter what your x value is, y is never going to change. Y is always going to be 7. Well, look at this. Look at what these two ordered pairs have in common. That's 7. So if I were to plot those two ordered pairs, 1, 7 and negative 2, 7, the only way to connect them is with a nice straight line that's horizontal. Determine the slopes of the lines defined by the following equations. If we had 2x plus 7y equals 9, and we wanted to find the slope of that, well, in order to know what the slope is, we need to do our y equals mx plus b. What a lot of students want to do is just look at the number in front of x and say, hey, that's your slope. But it's only that case if you are in y equals mx plus b form. So we need to isolate y, get y by itself. So we'll start by getting rid of this 2x by subtracting it. And now we'll divide by 7. And when I divide by 7, I need to divide this whole side by 7 and this whole side by 7. Which means I need to divide the negative 2x by 7 and the 9 by 7 and reduce. Negative 2 over 7 doesn't reduce, but from a previous video we talked about how we can just bring that x down. And that 9 over 7 doesn't reduce. But now we have this in y equals mx plus b form. So right here we can see what our slope is. Our m is negative 2 over 7. X equals negative 3/4. Well, what is that? We know that x equals 3/4 means that the x value is never going to change. So no matter what your y value is, your x is always going to be negative 3/4. That forms a vertical line. And in a previous video, we talked about how the slope of a vertical line is undefined. Y equals 9. There is no slope, right? That's just a horizontal line. We just talked about that, which means you don't rise or run, which means your slope is 0. Find the equation in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b form, of the line that passes through the points negative 3, negative 2, and 1, 6, and then we'll graph the line. All right, in order to write the equation of a line, you need a slope and a point. Well, we don't have a slope, so that's going to be our first thing. Take the y from our second point minus the y from our first point over the x from our second point minus the x from our first point, and that gives us 8 over 4, or 2. And so now we have a slope, but we have 2 points. So we just pick one. So we use negative 3, 2. We want y equals mx plus b. We don't have b, but we have a solution point negative 3, negative 2 that works. So I can plug in m equals 2, y equals negative 2, and x equals negative 3, and solve for b to get b is equal to 4. So when I put this together, the equation of this line is y equals 2x plus 4. So the next part we want to do is graph it. So when we look at our y equals 2x plus 4, the first thing we want to look at is m. M is 2, which can be written as 2 over 1, or it can be written as negative 2 over negative 1. If we write it this way, that means rise 2, or up 2, run 1, or go right 1. This means rise negative 2, which means go down 2, and run negative 1, which means go left 1. And then our b is 4, which means that the y-intercept is the ordered pair 0, 4. So let's start with that. We know the ordered pair 0, 4 is on the graph. So we'll start by graphing that point right there. Now our slope tells us what we can do is go up to right 1 and put a dot there, or we can go down to left 1, down to left 1, down to left 1, and we get all these dots right here, which we can now see that nice straight line forming, connect the dots, and there is the graph of y equals 2x plus 4. That's it for now. See you next time.